In the vast expanse above us, where clouds drift like ancient ghosts and sunlight glints off silent wings, lies a realm of wonder and of terror. For over a century, humankind has conquered the skies, transforming the impossible dream of flight into something ordinary. Yet even in this age of satellites and global tracking, there are moments when the sky simply swallows whole what once soared so boldly across it. Tonight, we journey into the heart of aviation's greatest mysteries, the stories of airplanes that vanished without a trace. No distress call, no signal. Sometimes not even a scrap of wreckage. 1 minute, families and crew were talking, laughing, making plans. The next, their fate was sealed somewhere between the clouds and the endless blue. What really happened to these flights? Were they victims of fierce storms, invisible malfunctions, or something more sinister territories where compasses spin wildly and radio signals die, where some claim otherworldly forces still hold sway? These are questions that haunt investigators, fascinate skeptics, and keep families waiting at airports with hope that never fades. Buckle your seatbelt. We're about to cross into the unknown, following the lost flight paths of history's most baffling disappearances. Their stories are not just cautionary tales. They are reminders of how little we truly know about the skies above and the secrets they are determined to keep. MH370 Ghost over the Indian Ocean. The world never forgets the number MH370. It's the haunting code whispered in every airport, a symbol of how easily certainty can vanish into thin air. March the 8th, 2014. In the still darkness before dawn, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 prepares for a routine journey from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. 239 people, families, business travelers, children, settle into their seats, their minds focused on arrivals, reunions, and ordinary days ahead. No one suspects they are boarding a flight that will never land. At 12:41 a.m., the massive Boeing 777 lifts off its lights, gleaming against the endless black. The pilots exchange final words with ground control, and for nearly an hour, everything is textbook smooth. Then, somewhere over the South China Sea, MH370 vanishes from civilian radar. Not a word, not a sound, just silence. For days, then weeks, the world watches in disbelief. Countries scramble ships and planes to search the ocean. Satellites scan thousands of miles of turbulent water, hunting for any sign, an oil slick, a floating seat cushion, a glimpse of hope. Debris washes up on distant shores, but none of it is enough to tell the real story. Investigators work around the clock. They follow the pings of the plane's automated communication system, strange ghostly signals that suggest MH370 turned sharply off course, flying south over the Indian Ocean for hours. The theories multiply. Was it a technical failure, a cockpit emergency, or something more sinister? Some point to the pilot, others to a hidden hijacker, or even an act of mass disappearance orchestrated from within. Every answer seems to birth more questions. Why did the plane's transponder stop transmitting? Who entered the strange final route into the plane's flight computer? Was it planned or pure chance? Years pass. Underwater drones scan the ocean floor, piecing together fragments of fuselage from Mozambique to Madagascar. Yet the main wreckage, let alone the black boxes, remains lost in the deep, as if the ocean itself refuses to give up its secrets. For the families waiting on news, each new headline is a cruel hope. They are somewhere, one mother insists. We just don't know where. As time slips away, MH370 becomes less of a missing flight and more of a legend, a modern ghost story written in sorrow and salt water. Its fate is still debated in quiet rooms and crowded forums, a puzzle with too many missing pieces. Did MH370 fall victim to mechanical error? Was it commandeered and flown off course? Or in an age when we track everything, did something truly unexplainable happen high above a sleeping world? For now, the sky keeps its secret, and the number MH370 remains etched into our collective memory, a question mark drifting over the endless blue. Flight 19, swallowed by the Bermuda Triangle. In the shadowy waters off Florida's coast lies a region that has captured imaginations for decades, a place where compasses go haywire and stories of vanishing ships and planes never seem to end. It's here in December 1945 that the legend of the Bermuda Triangle would be forever cemented by the disappearance of Flight 19. The day begins as routine. 5 Grumman Avenger torpedo bombers, each crewed by young Navy airmen, line up on the tarmac at Fort Lauderdale. Their mission, a simple navigation training exercise out over the Atlantic, then back home before dusk. The skies are clear, the men are confident, and the engines roar to life, echoing across the warm Floridian air. The flight lifts off and heads east, blue ocean stretching endlessly beneath their wings. But as the afternoon unfolds, things begin to unravel. The squadron leader radios and his compass isn't working. The coastline, once familiar, now seems foreign and strange. Disorientation sets in. They circle searching for landmarks, but nothing matches what's on their maps. The confusion spreads across the radios. Distorted messages crackle through the static. We can't find west. Everything looks wrong. Ground control grows alarmed, trying desperately to guide the pilots home. Hours tick by. Fuel runs low. Daylight fades. One by one, the voices grow faint, then vanish altogether. As the sun slips below the horizon, hope dwindles. A massive search operation is launched, hundreds of planes and ships scouring the ocean, calling into the darkness for any sign. But nothing surfaces. No debris, no life vests, no oil slick. The entire squadron has seemingly disappeared, as if plucked from the sky by some unseen hand. And then, as if scripted by fate, one of the rescue planes sent to find them also vanishes. 13 more men lost. The searchers become the searched. The sea, indifferent and silent, keeps its secrets well. What could explain such a total disappearance? In the days that follow, experts point to the primitive navigation technology of the era, unpredictable weather, and the human factor, stress and confusions in unfamiliar skies. But that doesn't stop the stories from growing wilder. Whispers of magnetic anomalies, rogue waves, and even supernatural forces swirl through newspapers and late-night radio. Decades pass. No trace of Flight 19 is ever found. No answers, only theories. Did the planes crash into stormy waters and sink to the depths? Did faulty equipment and panic turn a simple exercise into tragedy? Or does the Bermuda Triangle truly hold a power beyond science? A patch of ocean where reality itself bends and breaks? Even today, the mystery of Flight 19 lingers, a ghost fleet lost to time, drifting in the collective imagination. Somewhere out there, beyond the reach of radar and reason, 5 planes and 14 souls remain missing, swallowed whole by the deep blue and the legends that still swirl above it. Amelia Earhart, the First Lady of Disappearance. She was a symbol of courage, adventure, and limitless possibility. A woman who refused to be grounded by the conventions of her time. Amelia Earhart had already carved her name in the clouds as the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic. Yet it was her final flight that would make her an immortal mystery. July 2nd, 1937. A twin-engine Lockheed Electra sits waiting on a rain-soaked runway in Lae, New Guinea. Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan prepare for the most dangerous stretch of their round-the-world journey. A daunting 500-mile leap across the vast, empty Pacific to tiny Howland Island. The air is thick with tension and hope. Earhart's voice is steady, her eyes focused. She had already traveled more than 20,000 miles. This was supposed to be the triumphant final chapter. The Electra lifts off and vanishes into the gray dawn. Hours pass. In the control room at Howland Island, U.S. Coast Guard operators strain to hear every word through the static. Earhart's radio signals grow weaker, her voice tinged with exhaustion and anxiety. We are on the line 157, 337. We will repeat this message. We are running north and south. Her last transmission, we are running low on fuel. We are unable to reach you by radio. Then nothing. Just the endless hiss of static, the sky swallowing her whole. The world is stunned. One of the greatest aviators in history has vanished without a trace. An unprecedented search unfolds. Navy ships and planes sweep thousands of miles of open water and coral atolls. The White House issues daily updates. Families gather around radios clinging to hope. But hope fades as days become weeks. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation, just silence stretching across the Pacific. In the decades that follow, the theories multiply, each one stranger and more intriguing than the last. Did Earhart's Electra run out of fuel and crash into the sea, sinking to a watery grave? Did she land stranded and alive on a deserted island, her final days spent waiting for rescue that never came? Some whisper she was captured a pawn in the shadowy games of war-torn Asia. Others insist she lived out her life under a new identity, far from the fame that once defined her. Researchers, treasure hunters, and dreamers descend on tiny Nikumaroro Island, scouring the reef for scraps of metal bones or a single clue to rewrite history. They find relics, an old jar of freckle cream, fragments of a shoe, a piece of aluminum. Each discovery sparks headlines, but never delivers certainty. What happened to Amelia Earhart and Fred Noonan? The truth remains elusive, a haunting blank space in the record books and in our imaginations. The woman who inspired millions to reach for the skies became a legend not for how high she flew, but for how suddenly she vanished, leaving only questions drifting over the wide, wild Pacific. Somewhere far from crowded airports and headlines, the ghost of Amelia Earhart still waits silent, determined and forever beyond our grasp. Stardust. The final message, Stendek. High above the jagged peaks of the Andes, where clouds coil around stone like a shroud, and the wind howls secrets through the mountain passes, a British airliner slices through the icy sky. The year is 1947, and commercial flight is still an adventure, dangerous, glamorous, and laced with the unknown. The aircraft is the Stardust, a sleek Avro Lancastrian operated by British South American Airways. It is carrying 6 crew members and 5 passengers from Buenos Aires to Santiago, a flight meant to be routine even if the route passes over some of the world's most unforgiving terrain. The journey is smooth at first. Passengers sip tea, glance out at snow-capped peaks glinting in the afternoon sun, and perhaps let their thoughts wander to loved ones waiting at the end of the line. Then as the Stardust nears Santiago, something changes. Visibility worsens. The air grows thin and turbulent. Approaching descent, the pilot radios Santiago Airport. His voice is calm, precise, and then suddenly cryptic. ETA Santiago, 1745. Stendek. He repeats the strange word twice more. Stendek, Stendek. No one on the ground knows what it means. Controllers ask for clarification, but there is only static. The Stardust never arrives. It disappears into the gray mountains, swallowed by storm and silence. Anxious hours turn to days, then weeks. Search parties comb the Andes on foot and horseback, braving snow and altitude, but find nothing. The disappearance of the stardust becomes a sensation, fueling theories that range from the plausible to the supernatural. Was it a navigational error? A sudden storm? Did the plane crash? Or could it possibly have landed in some remote valley, the passengers awaiting rescue? Some imagine Nazi gold espionage, even abduction by UFOs. But what everyone obsesses over is that single word, Stendek. Was it a code, a distress signal, a desperate garbled message sent from a doomed cockpit? For half a century, the mountains keep their secret. The relatives of the lost grow old and pass on their questions unanswered. The story of Stardust becomes a legend, a riddle built around one enigmatic transmission. Then in 1998, climbers stumble upon twisted metal and weathered bone revealed as a glacier slowly recedes. It is the Stardust, frozen in time high on the Tupungato Glacier. Investigators pieced together the story. The pilots, believing they had cleared the mountains, began their descent too early, striking the glacier at high speed. The cold preserved the evidence and the tragedy for decades. But even with the wreckage found, Stendek remains unsolved. Was it an aviation abbreviation, a misheard Morse code, or a scrambled plea in the final moments? No one can say for sure. Like so many mysteries of the sky, it lingers just out of reach, a single word echoing through the icy air. Stardust's last message is both a clue and a curse, proof that sometimes the answers we seek remain forever locked in the clouds, and the Andes keep what they take. Flight 2501. The vanishing over Lake Michigan, summer 1950. The Midwest is shrouded in a humid night electric with distant thunder. Northwest Airlines, Flight 2501. A sturdy Douglas DC-4 departs New York bound for Minneapolis with 55 passengers and 3 crew. The journey is routine, the skies above bustling with the post-war boom of commercial flight. No one suspects that before sunrise, this plane will become the centerpiece of one of America's greatest unsolved aviation mysteries. It's just after midnight when Flight 2501 approaches the vast black mirror of Lake Michigan. A squall line thick with churning clouds and flashes of lightning stretches across the route. The pilot radio's ground control turbulence is severe. He requests permission to descend from 3,500 feet to 2,500, hoping to find calmer air below the storm. Permission is denied. The airspace below is crowded with other traffic. The last words from Flight 2501 echo through the static, a routine acknowledgement, no sign of distress. Minutes later, the plane vanishes from radar. No SOS. No explosion on the horizon. Just sudden, irreversible silence. Day breaks and the search begins. The Coast Guard, local police, and civilian volunteers fan out along the shoreline. Fishermen haul in strange debris, seat cushions, pieces of insulation, fragments of clothing, tiny scraps, but never enough to sketch the full tragedy. The largest piece of wreckage is a single life jacket battered by the waves. Divers comb the murky waters, their vision swallowed by silt and shadow. Sonar scans miles of lake bed. Over the decades, technology advances, but the story does not. No fuselage is ever found. No bodies are ever recovered. Theories swirl like lake mist. Did violent turbulence break the plane apart? Did a lightning strike trigger a fatal malfunction? Some imagine a mid-air collision, a secret military test gone wrong. Even the hand of fate at play in this inland sea known for its tempests and legends. But the lake, ancient and enigmatic, refuses to yield its secrets. Each summer, volunteers still gather part searchers, part mourners, hoping that the sands and currents might at last surrender what they have kept hidden for so long. For the families waiting on news that never comes, the loss is a wound that never quite heals. A mother stands at the edge of the water, staring at the horizon, searching for meaning in the lapping waves. A son grows old still wondering what happened that night. Every June candles flicker along the Michigan shore, small flames of remembrance for the 58 souls swallowed by the darkness. Flight 2501 is more than a missing plane. It is a question mark hanging over the heartland, a mystery that reminds us even the most familiar skies can hold unanswerable riddles. And somewhere beneath the restless surface of Lake Michigan, the silence endures. Star Tiger. The phantom flight over Bermuda. The Atlantic can be as beautiful as it is merciless. In January 1948, its waters lit only by moonlight and scattered stars witnessed the quiet vanishing of a modern airliner, an event that would only deepen the chilling legends of the Bermuda Triangle. Star Tiger, a British South American Airways Avro Tudor 4, was not carrying movie stars or politicians. Its 31 souls on board, passengers and crew, were everyday travelers, businessmen, vacationers, and flight attendants dreaming of warmth in Bermuda. Their journey from the Azores to Bermuda seemed routine. The plane itself was considered state-of-the-art for its time. But as Star Tiger made its way across the ocean, the night became colder and the wind stronger. The radio operator, his voice steady, checked in with Bermuda Control. They were on course, though running slightly behind schedule. There was nothing to suggest disaster. No warnings. No sense of urgency. Only a request for a bearing to guide them the final miles over the dark water. At 3:17 a.m., the last radio message was received. Star Tiger was nearing Bermuda, flying low to avoid the wind. After that complete silence, the plane never arrived. An immediate search began at first light. Rescue aircraft swept the sea ships, scanned the horizon. Not a single piece of wreckage was found. No seats, no bodies, not even a scrap of luggage. It was as if Star Tiger and everyone aboard had been gently erased from existence. Speculation swirled. Some blamed the unpredictable weather, sudden storms, fierce crosswinds, and the possibility of running out of fuel in the blackness. Others pointed to mechanical failure or the challenge of navigating long over-water flights with primitive equipment. Yet the plane was in constant contact with ground control until moments before it disappeared. Still, the legend of the Bermuda Triangle only grew stronger. Was there something more, something strange about this patch of ocean that played havoc with compasses and swallowed ships and planes alike? Or were these just the stories people tell to make sense of the random cruelty of nature? In its official report, the investigation could only offer this. It may truly be said that no more baffling problem has ever been presented for investigation. The words echo the frustration of families and of a world hungry for answers. Today, the fate of Star Tiger lingers in the mind like a song's final unresolved note. The faces of those lost have faded from memory, but the story endures another question, mark another scar on the map of the Atlantic. Over 70 years later, the ocean still guards its secret, and every time an airliner flies toward Bermuda, there's a faint whisper in the wind. Remember the Star Tiger and the night the sky itself seemed to open and swallow a plane whole. Star Ariel disappeared into clear skies. It was a new year, a new journey, and the weather was perfect. On January 17th, 1949, less than a year after the disappearance of the Star Tiger, another aircraft from British South American Airways took flight from Bermuda to Kingston, Jamaica. The plane was the Star. Ariel, nearly identical to its lost sister, with the same sleek lines and the same promise of safe passage over the tropical blue. 39 souls boarded that morning with the sun casting a golden sheen on the runway. The air was calm, the sky cloudless conditions pilots dream about. Captain John McPhee, experienced and confident, communicated clearly with ground control, reporting his position and altitude at regular intervals. There was nothing unusual, no hint of trouble, As Star Ariel crossed the halfway point to Jamaica, Captain McPhee sent another routine radio message. His words were precise, almost mundane. "I am changing frequency now." It would be his last transmission. After that silence fell a silence so sudden and complete that it seemed unnatural. When Star Ariel failed to appear on schedule, the response was immediate and desperate. Search planes combed the route, tracing the straight line across open water. Ships joined the hunt. But just like the Star Tiger before it, not a single trace was found. No oil slick, no floating debris, no call for help. It was as if the plane had slipped between the molecules of the air itself. Theories blossomed and withered. Some suggested an explosive loss of cabin pressure so rapid and total that not even a distress signal could be sent. Others wondered about sabotage, secret weapons, or a freak meteorological event that left no evidence behind. Some even whispered about a curse hanging over the airline's fleet, or that this part of the Atlantic was a threshold to somewhere unknown. Investigators struggled with the math. How could a modern aircraft in flawless weather with an experienced crew and meticulous communication simply cease to exist? There was no storm, no electrical failure reported, no hint of navigational confusion. The logs showed nothing out of the ordinary until they abruptly stopped. As the days passed, grief turned to bewilderment. Families waited for news that never came. Newspapers asked if the Bermuda Triangle was more than just a myth, if perhaps there truly was a place in the Atlantic where the rules changed and all bets were off. The Star. Ariel, like its predecessor, remains a ghost on the records lost, not to tempests or war, but to a silence so profound it almost feels deliberate. For the second time in less than 12 months, British South American Airways was left to face the impossible, the utter vanishing of a plane, its crew, and all those innocent lives. Today, the Star. Ariel's disappearance is still discussed by aviation historians, skeptics, and dreamers alike. Its fate, along with that of the Star Tiger, has become part of the mythos of the open ocean, a legend built not on what we know, but on everything we still cannot explain. Flying Tiger Line 739, lost over the Pacific. The Pacific Ocean is a tapestry of endless blue, vast and indifferent, swallowing secrets with a single wave. In March 1962, it claimed one of the most haunting mysteries of the jet age, the disappearance of Flying Tiger Line, Flight 739. The aircraft, a Lockheed Super Constellation, was on a military contract. Aboard were 93 U.S. soldiers, 3 South Vietnamese, and an experienced 11-person crew. They were headed to Saigon via Guam and the Philippines, a routine ferry mission at the height of Cold War tensions in Southeast Asia. On March 16th, the Super Constellation lifted off from Guam under a clear Pacific sky. The crew checked in with air traffic control at regular intervals. The mood was calm. For nearly 5 hours, the radio crackled with routine messages. Altitudes, weather updates, everything as expected. Then just over 500 miles west of Guam, the airwaves fell silent. No distress call, no warning, not a hint of trouble. The plane, its passengers, and every secret on board simply vanished. Within hours, the largest air-sea search in Pacific history was underway. Over 1,300 personnel, 48 aircraft, and 8 ships swept nearly 200,000 square miles of open ocean. Radar operators pored over screens looking for any sign, a reflection, a shadow, anything. But there was nothing. Not a single scrap of metal, not a life vest, not a trace of the 107 souls who had taken off that morning. Rumors began to swirl. Some whispered of sabotage, a covert operation gone wrong. Others imagined a catastrophic mid-air explosion so sudden that the crew never had time to react. There were even reports from a Liberian tanker crew, a bright flash high above the horizon, as if something had torn apart the night sky. Was it the flying tiger? No evidence ever confirmed it. The official investigation found no answers, no mechanical fault, no weather event, no clear explanation. All possibilities remained open, from a fuel tank explosion to the shadowy realm of Cold War espionage. Families clung to hope, then to grief, as days stretched into weeks with no sign of resolution. For the loved ones left behind, the absence was absolute. There was no crash site to mourn over, no certainty to anchor the pain. Year after year, reunions were held not to remember, but to remind the world that these men were still missing, that their story wasn't over. In time, the disappearance of Flying Tiger Line 739 faded from headlines, replaced by new tragedies, new mysteries. But for those who know the Pacific's dark reputation, it remains a chilling chapter, a reminder that even the most powerful technology can still be humbled by distance, by silence, by the sheer unknowability of the ocean. And somewhere far beneath the surface, or scattered by winds, no one can track the truth of Flight 739 drifts, just out of reach, as endless as the Pacific itself. DC-3, Argentina, 1948, lost minutes before landing. Some mysteries haunt not because of storms or mechanical failure, but because they occur on calm, familiar routes, when safety seems certain and the end is in sight. Such is the case with the Argentine DC-3, a passenger flight that vanished just minutes before landing, leaving behind only questions and heartache. It was the evening of November 3rd, 1948. The Douglas DC-3, a reliable workhorse of the era, was flying from Buenos Aires to the city of Mendoza, nestled at the foot of the Andes. 24 passengers and 3 crew members were on board, most of them local travelers, students, businessmen, families reuniting after long journeys. The flight proceeded without incident. The weather was clear, the radio communications steady. As the DC-3 neared its destination, the pilot radioed Mendoza Airport to confirm their approach. The city lights sparkled below, and for those looking out the windows, the end of the journey must have felt close enough to touch. But then silence. The plane never arrived. Air traffic controllers grew uneasy. They reached out again and again, but no reply came. A search was launched. Almost immediately, rescue teams scoured the foothills, helicopters and planes circled above, and word spread quickly across Argentina: a plane had disappeared on a clear night just minutes from safety. Days turned into weeks. Theories flourished. Perhaps the aircraft had been forced down in the rugged terrain by sudden weather, or maybe a mechanical failure sent it off course. Some wondered about foul play, or a desperate attempt at an emergency landing on the unforgiving slopes of the Andes. But no wreckage was found. Not a seat cushion, not a suitcase, not a single clue. The vastness of the mountains and the tangled forests seemed to swallow the DC-3 whole. Families gathered in Mendoza, clinging to hope with every new rumor or unconfirmed sighting. Searchers combed riverbanks and hidden valleys, listening for any echo from the lost flight. As weeks slipped into months, hope faded, replaced by the dull ache of uncertainty, the peculiar pain of not knowing, not being able to say goodbye. Years later, occasional news stories would surface: hikers who thought they'd glimpsed a wing in the underbrush, hunters who found twisted metal on a remote peak. But none of these leads ever led to answers. To this day, the disappearance of the Argentine DC-3 is a story Argentinians know well, a reminder that even on calm nights, even with home in sight, the sky can still keep its secrets. For the families who waited and the searchers who never gave up, it remains a mystery that hovers just above the city lights, a ghost flight eternally circling, forever lost on its final descent. Lady Be Good, ghosts over the Libyan desert, war breeds its own kind of mysteries. But few are as haunting as that of Lady Be Good, a World War II bomber that vanished into the sands of North Africa, only to be found years later, perfectly preserved, her story frozen in time. April 4th, 1943. The B-24 Liberator, nicknamed Lady Be Good, lifts off from an airbase in Libya with a crew of 9. Their mission is to bomb Naples and return across the endless blackness of the desert night. It's Lady Be Good's very first combat flight. The men are nervous but experienced, trained for the rigors of long-range missions. The raid over Italy is routine. Bombs dropped, the formation turns for home. But as darkness falls and a sandstorm begins to brew, the desert becomes a vast, disorienting void. The crew loses their bearings. Radio communications crackle and fade. Believing they are over their home base, they overshoot it by hundreds of miles, flying deeper and deeper into the Sahara. Fuel dwindling, engines sputtering. The crew has no choice but to bail out into the cold, silent night. Parachutes blossom against the stars, and Lady Be Good glides on unpiloted to crash softly in the sand. For years, her fate is unknown. The war ends, new battles are fought, and Lady Be Good is just another entry on the long list of missing in action. But the desert forgets nothing. In 1958, British oil explorers discover a strange shape lying half buried in the sand on the fuselage of a plane, eerily intact, its guns still in place, thermos bottles filled with tea log books open as if awaiting their owner's return. The discovery sparks a massive investigation. Personal belongings, boots and flight jackets are found along a faint trail in the dunes. Skeletons lying side by side tell the story of a desperate trek for survival crewmen who walked nearly 100 miles through the scorching wasteland, hoping for rescue that never came. Their journey is reconstructed from diaries and notes filled with courage, exhaustion, and fading hope. They rationed water, watched for aircraft overhead, and held on to each other until the very end. To this day, Lady Be Good remains one of the most compelling ghost stories of aviation, a reminder that the sky's dangers do not end when the engines stop. The Sahara preserved her like a time capsule, a message from the past for those who would listen. In the silence of the Libyan desert, the bones of Lady Be Good and her crew rest, their mission incomplete, their memory forever drifting on the hot wind. Some mysteries end with answers. Others, like this one, become legends, haunting, heroic, and never truly at rest. Varied Flight 967 vanished with priceless cargo. Sometimes it's not just lives that vanish, it's entire stories. Whole chapters of art and culture wiped away in a single moment. Such was the fate of Varied Flight 967, a mystery that begins in the glare of an airport hangar and ends quite simply nowhere. January 30th, 1979. At Tokyo's Narita International Airport, a Boeing 707 prepares for its long-haul journey to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. On board are 6 experienced crew members, but not a single passenger. Their precious cargo, 153 paintings by the celebrated Japanese-Brazilian artist Manabu Mabe, masterpieces, returning home after an international exhibition, works worth millions, but truly priceless to the families and country awaiting them. The plane lifts off under clear skies, a routine flight charted carefully over the Pacific. For the first 20 minutes, all is normal. The captain, Gilberto Araujo da Silva, checks in with air traffic control, reporting a smooth climb and no technical issues. Then, without warning, radio contact is lost. At first, it seems like a minor glitch, one of those static-filled blackouts so common in the vast stretches over open water. But as minutes tick by and the plane fails to check in again, a sense of dread spreads among ground controllers. Somewhere between Tokyo and the first oceanic waypoint, Varig 967 has disappeared. A massive search is launched. Japanese and American ships crisscross the area, scanning for any trace of the 707 wreckage oil slicks floating cargo. But the Pacific offers nothing. Not a scrap of metal, not a drop of paint. It's as if the airplane, its crew, and its priceless cargo have all been erased from existence. Speculation spreads quickly. Some whisper of hijacking or foul play, a scheme to steal the valuable artwork and spirit it away. Others point to possible technical failure or sudden depressurization or a catastrophic fire in the hold. But without debris, there is only speculation. The plane left no mayday, no trail. For the families of the crew and for the art world, the loss is incalculable. The paintings, vibrant and irreplaceable, exist now only in photographs and memories. The crew's families are left with nothing but questions and a long shadow that stretches from Japan to Brazil. Official investigations conclude with no answers, just a cold case file and the haunting sense of an unfinished journey. Was it human error, a mechanical malfunction, or a perfectly executed crime? The truth, like the art itself, is lost somewhere beneath the endless blue, or perhaps still hidden in the world above. Varig, Flight 967 remains an unsolved chapter in the annals of aviation, a cargo of culture and dreams vanished into the silence, never to arrive home. And with each year that passes, its absence only deepens the mystery, a blank canvas where answers should be. AIR France L1049, 1953. Disappearance over the Atlantic. The North Atlantic is a restless expanse stretching from continent to continent like a rolling icy desert. For centuries, sailors and aviators alike have whispered of its moods, its sudden storms, its chilling fog, its power to hide secrets in plain sight. On September 1st, 1953, it became the stage for yet another tragedy without an answer, the disappearance of Air France, Flight L1049. The flight was meant to be a celebration of progress, a gleaming Lockheed super constellation, the pride of post-war aviation, left Paris bound for New York City, ferrying 42 passengers and crew across the ocean. There was a sense of optimism on board, as if technology itself could conquer the wildest places on Earth. Through the first hours, the journey was uneventful. Radio operators traded routine messages with air traffic controllers as the plane crossed the English Channel, then the Irish Sea, then out over the endless waves of the Atlantic. As the night deepened, the constellation checked in one final time, its voice calm and confident, reporting position and heading. Then, silence. No distress call, no hint of trouble. The super constellation simply never arrived. When word spread that Air France L1049 was missing, a massive search unfolded. Ships and reconnaissance planes from France, the United States, and the United Kingdom crisscrossed the flight's projected path. Radar stations scanned every possible route. Radio frequencies hummed with desperate hope. But the ocean gave up nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, not even an oil slick to mark the spot. Investigators struggled for answers. Had the plane flown into a sudden storm, its wings torn apart by brutal winds? Was it a catastrophic mechanical failure, one so quick, so devastating that there was no time to send a signal? Or had something more subtle gone wrong, an instrument malfunction, a navigational error, or a hidden flaw in the aircraft's design? As the days passed and the search yielded, nothing theories began to multiply. Some wondered about the fabled expanded Bermuda Triangle, a patch of the Atlantic where reason seemed to falter and the rules didn't always apply. Others simply accepted the most likely, if unsatisfying explanation. The ocean is vast, and it buries its dead deep. For the families of those on board, the loss was total and mysterious. There were no funerals, no final words, only an aching emptiness that stretched from Paris to New York and back again. The name L1049 became another entry in the long list of those who set out across the Atlantic and never reached the far shore. Today, Air France L1049 endures as both a caution and a mystery, a reminder that even as technology advances, the elements can still humble us, and the Atlantic with all its blue infinity is still a place where airplanes and answers can simply disappear. Canadian Pacific DC-4, 1951, lost over the Pacific. On the map, the Pacific looks almost calm, a stretch of gentle blue between continents. But for aviators, it's a realm of distance and unpredictability, a place where the horizon always seems just out of reach. In July 1951, the ocean's vastness swallowed yet another aircraft and 47 lives, leaving behind only questions and grief. The Canadian Pacific DC-4 was a sturdy, reliable machine. That day it carried passengers and crew on Flight 3505 from Vancouver, Canada to Tokyo, Japan. Among those on board were families, business people, and children, all excited or anxious for the journey across the world's largest ocean. The flight began routinely, spirits high, as the DC-4 climbed into clear summer skies. At each checkpoint along the route, the crew radioed in, reporting calm conditions and smooth flying. As the plane reached the halfway mark, the last radio transmission was sent, brief, unremarkable, just another confirmation that all was well. Then, nothing. The DC-4 missed its next scheduled check-in. Hours passed, and air traffic controllers grew tense. Radar, still in its infancy for tracking over such distances, offered no clues. There were no distress calls, no indication of technical trouble, no hint of a storm or mid-air collision. The flight had simply vanished somewhere over the endless blue. Search and rescue teams mobilized swiftly. Canadian, American, and Japanese aircraft and ships scoured thousands of miles of open water, combing through waves and searching remote islands. But not a single trace was found. No floating debris, no oil slick, no bodies. The Pacific, deep and inscrutable, had consumed the aircraft and everyone aboard. Theories soon emerged. Some pointed to possible engine failure or a fire that incapacitated the crew before they could send a distress signal. Others wondered about severe weather or even a sudden loss of cabin pressure. But with no evidence, the official reports could only list the cause as unknown, a word that offers little comfort to those left behind. For the families, the loss was a wound that would never fully heal. In Vancouver and Tokyo, in small towns along the route, loved ones gathered for memorials without remains. They told stories, clung to photos, and searched news clippings for any hope, any explanation. Years passed, and the Pacific kept its silence. Modern technology, sonar, satellite imaging, deep-sea robotics has still never located the wreckage. Flight 3505 became another name on the long roll call of missing planes, a mystery that continues to echo in the memory of those who look up and wonder. In the world of aviation, most flights end with safe landings, bustling airports, and happy reunions. But the Canadian Pacific DC-4 reminds us that sometimes, even in the age of progress, the world is vast, the ocean is patient, and there are still places where a plane can simply vanish, leaving only stories and shadows behind. Malaysia QZ 8501. Disappearance in the modern era. In an age of instant communication and satellites that can track the smallest detail from space, the idea that a modern jetliner could simply vanish seems almost impossible. But on December 28, 2014, AirAsia Flight QZ 8501 proved that even now the sky can still keep its secrets. It was meant to be an ordinary morning. The Airbus A 320-216 packed with 162 passengers and crew took off from Surabaya, Indonesia, bound for Singapore. On board were families heading for vacation business, travelers, children dreaming of seeing new places. The flight crew was experienced the aircraft nearly knew. Shortly after takeoff, the weather began to turn. Thick storm clouds gathered along the flight path, growing taller and more menacing by the minute. The captain requested to climb above the turbulence, hoping to rise above the gathering tempest. But permission came too late. Within moments, flight QZ 8501 disappeared from radar. Air traffic controllers tried desperately to re-establish contact, but the radio remained silent. Search teams scrambled to the last known position over the Java Sea. For days, hope flickered. Maybe the plane had made an emergency landing on a remote island. Maybe survivors were waiting to be found. The truth, when it emerged, was heartbreaking. Wreckage was spotted floating on the sea's surface, scattered across the water in a somber mosaic. The tail of the jet was recovered first, followed by seats luggage, and finally the black boxes that would tell the story of the flight's final moments. The investigation revealed a tragic chain of events, a combination of severe weather, a technical fault in the rudder control system, and a series of human errors. The pilots, battling unreliable readings and powerful updrafts, lost control of the aircraft. Within seconds, the jet entered a deadly stall and plunged into the sea. But for many, the disappearance of QZ 8501 raises deeper questions. How could a state-of-the-art airplane monitored by ground radar and satellites vanish so suddenly and completely? Why did it take so long to find the wreckage, even in relatively shallow waters? Was there more that could have been done? For the families left behind, the answers bring little comfort. The crash site, though, found offered only fragments and memories. The Java Sea became a place of pilgrimage, a watery grave holding the hopes and heartbreaks of those aboard. In the aftermath, changes were made, improvements in pilot training, updates to aircraft systems, stricter protocols for flying near thunderstorms. Yet, QZ 8501 stands as a reminder that even in the modern era, with all our technology and expertise, we are still at the mercy of the elements and of our own limitations. Somewhere between the clouds and the sea, there are still moments when a plane's final journey becomes a mystery, a story waiting for answers. And every time we fly, we are reminded the sky may be mapped, but it is never fully tamed. We have followed flight paths across continents and oceans, through storms and sunlight, tracing the outlines of mysteries that have outlived generations. For each missing plane, there are countless theories and even more questions. Technology has given us black boxes, satellites, and deep-sea robots, yet the answers often remain just out of reach, suspended somewhere between clouds and currents. Perhaps that's what draws us back to these stories again and again, the reminder that for all our progress, we are still small beneath the vast, uncharted sky. The vanishing of an airplane is more than an event. It's a riddle that challenges our faith in order and certainty. It's a story where fact and legend blur, and where every answer births another question. Maybe one day the oceans will surrender their secrets. Maybe a single clue overlooked for years will rewrite history and give comfort to those who wait. Or maybe some mysteries are meant to endure, keeping our sense of wonder alive. So the next time you look up at a jet carving white lines across the blue, remember the sky holds both our dreams and our deepest enigmas. What would you ask if you could speak to those still lost between worlds? What secrets do you think the clouds are hiding? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your questions, because as long as there are mysteries in the sky, there will be stories to tell and reasons to keep searching.